Imagine sitting at the dinner table with your family. Laughter, conversation, the smell of beautiful home-cooked food. But you don't take a bite because you can't. How do you go out to brunch with your friends when everybody's ordering smashed avocados and lattes and your nutrition comes from a pump in your backpack? How do you celebrate a birthday when you can't eat the cake? This is the reality for thousands of people worldwide who live at home with a feeding tube. Food, it's often mistaken for just calories, but it's so much more. Food is culture, curries and kusa. It's connection at the kitchen table. It's celebration. There's not one milestone that we don't celebrate with food. It's comfort after a real bad breakup. But what happens when eating in the traditional way through your mouth is no longer possible forever? Feeding tubes are either suspended from the nose or the abdomen. They end in the stomach or the small intestine. You can put commercial formula, water, medication, and everyday food through your feeding tube. Meals can be administered at intervals during the day with a syringe or infused slowly with a pump. Some common causes for feeding tubes include neurological disorders at birth, brain injury after traumatic events, or cancers of the digestive tract and the head and neck region. Here's the problem. The experiences of tubies, as we affectionately call people with feeding tubes, are utterly invisible. As a dietitian, neck deep in this work through my research and my clinical practice, I've witnessed and seen firsthand the effects of loneliness at the dining table in a lot of my clients. Let's take Alex, for example. Alex's life changed in an instant when a traumatic, devastating car accident resulted in an acquired brain injury, leaving her with an inability to swallow, amongst other things. At the hospital, her tube feeding is treated like medication administration: cold, clinical, and sterile. Understandably, as clinicians, we think safety and control first. But what Alex is thinking is this deep weight of loss for the taste, the smell, and the shared meals at the dining table. Alex turns on the TV. What does she see? Cooking shows, food ads. She scrolls her social media. What does she see? Recipe reels and photos of everybody's lunch that day. She's utterly invisible. And when she's visible, it's through a lens of illness, frailty, and pity. When Alex goes home with her feeding tube, her mealtimes run like a clinical clock. Sleep disturbances, sterile equipment, once a spoon, now a syringe. A study out of the University of Wollongong found that 4 out of 5 Australians that live with a feeding tube restrict social engagements. 3 out of 5 feel excluded from their actual friends, and 50% are either depressed or anxious. In this food-obsessed culture that we live in, how do we create an environment that's more inclusive? How do we create an environment that's inclusive of everybody, regardless of how they eat? Their hands, fork, spoon, chopsticks, or feeding tube. Maybe you work at a cafe. and you slap a big sign at the front door saying, "Tubies welcome." Maybe you're a fashion designer and you want to niche into something. How about wedding gowns that flaunt feeding tubes? Maybe you're a health professional and you're still treating tube feeding like medication administration, filled with apologies instead of empowerment and clinical jargon. Your words really matter. Maybe you want to celebrate a colleague that's tube fed and just got a promotion at work. Rather than bringing in the cheese and cake, ask them, how would they like to celebrate? Inclusion starts with asking. Or maybe you're simply at a park and you see a mother feeding her child, nourishing her child with a feeding tube. Don't look away. Don't pity them. Smile and maybe tell them about this TED Talk. In fact, if you think about it, our first lifeline was a feeding tube, the umbilical cord. And our current lifeline's a feeding tube, the esophagus. It's just that some people have theirs on the outside. Juliet runs marathons with her feeding tube. Pedro is a bodybuilder with his feeding tube. Samuel just graduated with a master's from a top-tier university with his feeding tube. And Meredith is a UN speaker with her feeding tube. Real people, real names, and there are thousands more. So next time you're sitting at the dinner table, think about those who can't eat but still want to feel included. After all, nutrition is an expression of love, and that through a feeding tube is no exception. Thank you.